What's up guys, I hope you're all doing well. Today I'll be showing you the build I ran on my rogue through the entirety of early to mid game content. I will mention if you're in the end game looking for something to change up your build or help you out in that high level content, this is not your video. There are plenty of extensive guides that'll go over the builds and even get into the ancestral legendaries, uniques, and the aspects that you want to roll with them, as well as the paragon board and all that, but this video is targeted towards players between the levels 0 and 70. I did make use of this build after I got my rogue, and it did last me all the way until around level 70 when I started to spec into the frost and poison builds, because I don't think the build I'll be showing you today can compete with some of these endgame builds that people are running on rogue. But these builds aren't as effective until you have the gear, knowledge, and skills to pull them off. So I'm going to be showing you a shadow imbuement twisting blades build that you can start working towards all the way at level 1 on rogue, and this will carry you all the way to world tier 4. Let's get into it. Now once again, if you're looking for that endgame stuff, you won't find it here. I'm trying to keep this as simple to understand as possible because I know there is a massive influx of new players who might struggle to understand a lot of the features and how this game works. So I'll go over the skill tree and what to upgrade and how it all works together, and then I will recommend some aspects and how to get them at the end. So let's start off with some gameplay and I'll explain how it works. So the build makes use of the Twisting Blades core ability that will stab your two blades into an enemy for a lot of damage, and then after 1.5 seconds, those blades rip out of the enemy and return straight back to you. Now as they return to you, they will pass through enemies, dealing even more damage, and then with the advanced Twisting Blades upgrade, they will significantly reduce our other ability cooldowns. Now this is the bread and butter of the build, and later I'll show you how to easily get an aspect called Blade Dancer, and that uses those returning blades and has them orbit around you to deal even more damage. And this is a must-have for any Twisting Blades build. I will get more into that later. Now it comes with Dash, which is a simple ability that does what you think. While it's good to be mobile and move around, this should more so be used to reposition yourself mid-fight so that those Twisting Blades can rip through entire packs of enemies on their way back to you. It will also daze enemies, but again, we'll get onto that later. Now Shadow Step is used like a secondary dash, super quick at repositioning, and it is a tool you can use anywhere as long as there is a target. Super good against bosses and elites as well, as it increases your crit strike chance. Now this you'll probably swap out in higher end builds, but early to mid game you'll definitely want to take Dark Shroud, especially if you are new to Diablo. Now this offers protection against damage, and it gets no deeper than that. Since we are very melee focused, this is super useful and you can have it up very often. Now the more signature and thematic part of the build is of course the shadow imbuement. Now this imbues your next two skills with shadow damage. Now that means when the enemies die from your skills, they will explode for more AOE damage, making this build insane for clearing groups. Now those explosions will make enemies vulnerable, which will tie into the build. Again, more on that later. Now, of course, we're going to take Puncture as well as our basic to help regen some energy when we've used it up on our Twisting Blades. That will happen quite often, but Puncture allows us to have it back very fast. So let's go through the skills. I'll tell you the order you probably want to grab things. So we're going to start off by grabbing Puncture, and then we're going to grab Enhanced Puncture. That is to open up the core skills. Now you then want to get Twisting Blades as soon as possible. Grab Enhanced Twisting Blades and then Advanced. Now this is how you're going to have your insanely short cooldowns. Now just go back and grab Fundamental Puncture in the basic skills section. This is not required, but it does split your basic into a wide 3-knife attack, and that is far better when fighting groups of enemies, which is even better for your energy regen. Now once you've done this, you will open up your agility skills where you want to grab Dash and Shadow Step. Now enhance your Dash by grabbing Enhanced and then Disciplined. Don't worry about upgrading it or Shadow Step for now, as we mainly just need these for movement. Although our Dash upgrades mean that we will be dazing enemies we pass through, as well as increasing our crit strike damage against them, which works perfectly with our Twisting Blades build. Now what we do want to upgrade is our Twisting Blades. Now you want to go back and put 4 more points into it. This is where majority of our damage will come from, so this is very important. And we're then going to go to the next section where we are going to grab Dark Shroud. Now that's for that protection that I mentioned earlier. We can then go back and get the Enhanced and Disciplined Shadow Step. This will further increase its its cooldown reduction, so you will have it almost all the time. Now, if you're high enough level and you've got some extra points, you want to start speccing into your shadow abilities, so we're going to start with the shadow imbuement, and then we will grab enhanced and blended. Next, we need to get a point in shadow crash so that we can max out our consuming shadow to hopefully create a cycle of infinite energy when we start killing things. Then you're just going to come up when you have more points and max out weapon mastery. Once you've done that, you want to come down and grab enhanced dark shroud and subverting dark shroud. This will increase your movement speed while dark shroud is active. Now, this doesn't happen very often, but we're actually going to skip on the ultimate abilities. So you need to grab some other perks to open up your key passives. So you can either grab some smaller perks or max out your shadow imbuement. If you want to get the perks, the number one must pick in my opinion is siphoning strikes, which will heal you on crit strikes. So make sure you grab sturdy and then max that out. You can also max out sturdy if you have the points. It is incredibly useful for this melee build as it does give 12% close range damage reduction. Now, you could grab a stutter step if you like the speed boost, but I think the better option is to grab precision imbuement since all of our attacks will be shadow imbued anyway. Now, once it is unlocked, you want to grab the key passive called momentum. Now, this grants a stack of momentum after hitting stunned or dazed enemies with cutthroat abilities. Now, cutthroat abilities include dash, twisting blades, and shadow step. Now, you also get a stack of momentum when hitting enemies from behind, which happens after dashing through enemies and hitting them with a twisted blades, not to mention your dash dazes enemies as well. Now, I'm sure you can start to see how this all links together really nicely. Now, if you want to enhance these stacks you're getting even further, you could swap out disciplined shadow step for methodical shadow step as it does stun enemies, but you do lose out on that cooldown reduction and it probably isn't needed. And once you've got 3 stacks of momentum, you're going to gain 20% damage reduction, 30% increased energy regen, and then 15% movement speed. Now, before I mention the last few skills, I will mention that you will want to run with the inner sight specialization. This places a purple eye over a target, and then when you eliminate them, it will attribute to filling up this gauge in the bottom right of your screen. And once that is full, you will gain unlimited energy for 4 seconds. Now, this can be great at applying a buttload of twisting blades into targets or absolutely blitzing a boss. Now, if you haven't got access to specializations yet, you do need to complete the quest for it. You get it at level 15, and for rogues, it is called True Potential. It's not very hard or long at all. Now, just use your leftover skill points to grab what you can. Make sure your shadow imbuement is maxed out if you didn't do that earlier, and I would prioritize these skills: sturdy, siphoning strikes, weapon mastery, and malice. Some of those I mentioned earlier, so you'd have them if you followed closely. Exploit is also very good, and you could put some points into adrenaline rush or haste if you want the movement boosts. And that is majority of the build laid out. I hope that was easy to follow. Now, before you click off the video, you can't miss out on the most important part, the aspects. Now, if you are newer to the game and you're not super familiar with aspects, I'll try and break it down for you. If you go to your collections, you'll have a Codex of Power, and these are the aspects you unlock by completing certain dungeons around the map. Now, you can take this to an occultist and then add it to an item for a small price. And these will always grant you the minimum possible stat bonuses, so later in the game you could get an item with a far better roll of the same aspect, which you could then rip from that weapon and then add it to another weapon instead. But for now, these will give super powerful buffs. Whether it's minimum percentages or not, it does not matter. It is still definitely worth it. Now, I might explain this in more depth for you newer players in another video. If you have any comments, leave them down below. I will try and respond as soon as possible. So when you're in your Codex of Power, you can sort by your class, and then you can see all the aspects you can go and grab right now. Now, the one you need is the Blade Dancer's aspect. This is the one I mentioned at the start of the video. You can click to pin the dungeon on the map. You're going to go there and complete it. If you want, you can change the world tier to 1 so that you can go and get these dungeons finished super fast. Now, once you've done that and you've gotten it, make sure you slot it into your bow or your crossbow. I'm not going to get into depth, but putting it on a two-handed weapon doubles its buff, which enhances it even further than if you were to put it on anything else like your daggers. Now, this is good because we aren't even making use of our bow in this build, so all it does is enhances our twisted blades even further, and it leaves your daggers or swords open for other aspect options in the future. Now, that is essentially the entire build complete. If you do want to go and get other aspects from dungeons and then slot them into your armor and items, the ones I would recommend are the aspect of unstable imbuements, the aspect of corruption, the aspect of might, the aspect of volatile shadows, the ravenous aspect, and the shadow slicer aspect. I do encourage you guys to read those descriptions yourself and make your own informed decisions about what you think would be cool or fun to use with this build. Trust me, you'll feel incredibly satisfied seeing all of these aspects and abilities gel really well together when you use them, and I do hope you have a blast with that. And don't forget to upgrade your gear, as it is very cheap to do so, and if you're going to slot gems, I would recommend emeralds for your 3 weapons, and either a topaz or a ruby on your armor. Take care guys, please let me know if this guide was good or if I could have improved it at all, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.